At the family reunion, my Aunt Renee stood up from her faded lawn chair, pointed her finger at me like I was a child again, and said, loud enough for every ear in that backyard to hear, "Don't bring your fatherless kid next time." It was like time stopped. Then came the laughter. Not the kind that flickers awkwardly and dies off. No, this laughter rolled through the air like a heat wave. Some people chuckled, eyes darting around like they were trying to find someone else to blame for reacting. Some leaned into it, clutching their sides like it was the funniest thing they'd heard all day. I stood there, frozen. My son, Malik, 15 years old and taller than me now, was by the cooler. He hadn't even opened his soda yet. His hand just gripped the can while his eyes, dark, calm, and unreadable, stared into nothing. His face didn't flinch. No anger, no sadness, just still. And that silence from him hurt more than anything. I didn't say a word. I wanted to. God knows I wanted to. I wanted to tell Aunt Renee she was bitter, that her sons weren't any better, that at least my fatherless son hadn't ended up in jail or broke or beating on his girlfriend. But I swallowed every syllable. Because when you've lived your whole life being the whisper behind people's smiles, you learn how to choke down dignity just to keep the peace. The night went on like nothing happened. The grill kept going. Someone turned up the music. Kids screamed and played tag, unaware of the tension simmering under every grown-up laugh. But when the check came at the end of the night, for the food, the venue, everything, Malik stood up, calm as a breeze, and said, "It's already paid for. And so is your mortgage." And that was the moment every voice in the yard died. No laughter, no music, just a long, stretching silence. I hadn't been to a family reunion in 6 years. Not since the last one when my cousin's husband got drunk and in the middle of a sloppy rant about kids these days, looked right at Malik, 8 years old at the time, and called him a mistake. He laughed like it was a joke. I didn't. I packed up our stuff and left. Never looked back. Never answered another text. Blocked every holiday invite. But this time, Malik asked me to go. And when Malik asks for something, I listen. He caught me in the kitchen the night before as I was rinsing dishes. "Come on, Mom. You don't have to talk to everyone," he said, handing me a towel. "Just be there. For you, not for them." I stared at him, half expecting him to grin and say he was kidding. But he didn't. He just dried the dishes with those long, thoughtful hands of his. Hands that used to clutch my fingers while crossing the street. Hands that now hold pieces of the man he's becoming. He's 15. But he's had the eyes of a grown man since he was 10. His father left when he was 4. Said he needed space. Then the next day, he blocked our numbers. Just like that. No child support. No phone calls. No birthday gifts. No goodbye. It took me a long time to stop blaming myself. To stop believing the lie that I'd ruined everything by having Malik young. But one thing I learned real quick. A broken man can't build a family. So I built one myself. I worked 2 jobs for most of Malik's life. Nursing assistant by day, office cleaner at night. Some months I stretched $50 like it was a miracle. Some nights I cried into a pillow so he wouldn't hear me from down the hall. But he always knew. He'd leave notes on the fridge. "Thank you, Mama. I'll help more soon. I love you even when you're tired." He never asked for much. And when he asked me to go to that reunion, I understood what he was really asking. He wasn't just asking me to be there. He was asking me to show up as the woman I am now. Not the girl who got pregnant too young. Not the disappointment, but the mother who made it work. The woman who raised him right. So I said yes. The morning of the reunion, Malik stood in the doorway while I looked for my necklace. "You forgot this," he said, already holding it, already stepping behind me to clasp it gently around my neck. "You clean up nice," I smiled, straightening the collar of his button-down. He shrugged. "I got your back." And those 4 words, they sat with me. Soft, safe, strong. We drove in silence mostly, my old Corolla humming along, windows cracked, and Malik's playlist on low. Some smooth soul, a little HER, some Anderson, Puck, the kind of music that makes your bones settle. Neither of us talked much, but the quiet between us wasn't heavy. It was mutual armor. Aunt Renee's backyard looked the same as always. Folding chairs arranged in crooked circles. Mismatched tablecloths fluttering in the breeze. Smoke rising from the grill. Kids darting between legs. And that same busted speaker playing 90s R&B like the past never ended. People waved when we walked in. Some offered side hugs. Others gave Malik that head nod they reserved for grown boys they hadn't seen in a while. He kept close to me, watchful, reading every interaction like a silent translator. He could feel it, the judgment hiding behind polite smiles, the subtle looks, the questions they didn't ask. Like, "How's his father doing?" Or, "So, who's Malik living with now?" I knew those looks. I lived in them. Aunt Renee was talking to her church friends when she noticed us. Her lips tightened into something that tried to be a smile, but never quite made it. She raised one eyebrow, her signature move, and then turned away. Dismissed. Again. As always. We sat near the edge of the yard, close enough to participate, far enough to escape. I made plates for us. Malik thanked me. We talked a little about school. He told me he'd been accepted into a summer tech program for underprivileged youth, though I hated that label. He wasn't underprivileged. He was unmatched. But I just smiled and told him I was proud. And I was. Then came that moment. That sentence that rang louder than the grill sizzle and the Motown playing on repeat. "Don't bring your fatherless kid next time." I remember how the air shifted. I remember how the wind seemed to die. I remember the crack of Malik's soda can finally opening. The sharp hiss. The only sound for what felt like forever. And I remember thinking, I can't cry here. Not in front of them. Not in front of him. So I didn't. We stayed. Not because we wanted to, but because Malik wouldn't let me shrink. And when the end of the night came and Aunt Renee passed around the collection plate for everyone to chip in for the food and set up, just like always, Malik stood. No emotion, just resolve. "It's already paid for," he said. "And so is your mortgage." The quiet that followed wasn't just awkward, it was historic. Renee blinks like she'd misheard. Her friends glanced at her, unsure what to say. He nodded. "Yeah, you missed the letter in your mailbox? Check it." "You're welcome." I stared at him, my heart trying to catch up. He'd told me he was coding, but I didn't realize how far he'd taken it. Turns out, he'd been building apps, freelancing, and investing in crypto, all while keeping up straight A's. He paid off her mortgage. Quietly, anonymously, with the kind of grace that humbles people without needing to embarrass them. We left after that. No more words. Just the sound of the gate clicking behind us. Once we got in the car, I finally spoke. "Why'd you do that?" He looked at me, still calm. because I wanted to show them what a fatherless kid can become. And that was the moment I realized I didn't just raise a good son, I raised a man. I tried. I really did. I complimented someone's new hair color, helped a cousin carry plates, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, but all of it felt brittle, forced, like I was dancing on a floor that could collapse at any second. Malik noticed too. I could tell. "You okay?" he asked, leaning over during dinner. "You," I whispered back. He gave me that calm look, the one I've seen 100 times before. "Just watching." That's Malik. Always watching. He's heard the whispers. He's seen the looks. He knows the stories they tell about us. The sun began to set, casting long golden shadows across the yard. Kids were still playing. The older men were in their usual loud debate near the grill. And then, right as I thought maybe we'd made it through the evening, Aunt Renee stood up. Her plastic cup was half full. Her voice, however, was not. "Don't bring your fatherless kid next time." It was like a slap. Not just at me, not just at Malik, but at every sacrifice I'd ever made. Every sleepless night, every missed meal, every moment I held him close and whispered, "We're okay. We've got each other." And they laughed. Not all of them, but enough. Enough to remind me why I stopped showing up. But then Malik stood up. Calm, steady, quiet. He looked around the table, held everyone's gaze. Then he spoke. "It's already paid for. And so is your mortgage." Gasps. Silence. I looked up at him, confused. Then it hit me. Malik had been coding for years. He'd been working part-time online. Last year, one of his projects blew up, some financial literacy app for teens. It got picked up by an investor. He didn't tell anyone but me. He'd made money. Serious money. I stared at my son, my boy, who I raised with sweat, tears, and fierce love. He had taken every bit of pain and turned it into power. And now he stood taller than all of them, not just in height, but in dignity. Aunt Renee's face turned red. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Malik didn't wait. He walked over to me, took my hand, and said, "Come on, Mama. We're done here." And just like that, we left. No yelling, no drama. Just two people who knew their worth walking away from a table that never deserved a seat from us in the first place. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel ashamed. I felt proud, because I didn't raise a mistake. There's a certain rhythm to family reunions, the folding tables, the slap of dominoes on plastic, the smell of charcoal and barbecue smoke in the air, and the murmur of overlapping conversations and childhood stories that always end with someone swearing. That's not how it happened. I hadn't been to one in 3 years, and honestly, I debated showing up this time at all. But Malik wanted to come. And when your 15-year-old son looks you in the eye and says, "I want to know where I come from," you don't say no. So we showed up, just the two of us. As soon as we stepped onto the lawn, the heads started turning. I felt it before I saw it. That slight shift in posture, the pauses in conversation, the glances that lasted a little too long. People made their way over one by one. A few cousins, aunties, and old-timers offered the usual greetings. Too loud, too forced, too full of that fake warmth folks save for holidays and funerals. "Wow, Malik, you got tall," one cousin said, laughing like we were best friends. "You playing ball yet?" Malik just smiled politely. His shoulders relaxed, his hands in his pockets. He had his father's posture, but none of his shadow. Another cousin, one I hadn't seen since my baby shower, chuckled. Man, you really are his twin. She caught herself too late. Her eyes flicked to me for just a second before darting away, pretending she hadn't brought up the man we both no longer acknowledged. The man who left when Malik was 2 and never looked back. The man who chose silence over fatherhood. I laughed it off. I'd gotten good at that, brushing off the passive jabs, the awkward comments, the not-so-subtle reminders that some folks still kept score like high school never ended. We were halfway through dessert when everything changed. I remember it clearly, because some moments burn into your memory like fire. It was a warm evening. The sun was slipping low, casting an orange glow over the yard. People were scattered around, eating banana pudding off flimsy paper plates, making small talk about jobs, kids, and whatever else filled the silence. That's when Aunt Renee made her move. She stood from her table with the kind of flair that said she wanted to be seen. Her plate was stacked with banana pudding, the plastic fork clinking gently against it as she walked. She made a slow, deliberate path right to our table. Malik and I were sitting near the back, under a big oak tree, enjoying the peace of being ignored. She stopped, took a bite, then looked straight at me. "You know," she said loudly, voice casual like she was talking about the weather. "I don't know why you keep bringing your fatherless kid to these things." It was like a switch flipped in the atmosphere. Not all at once, but in ripples. One conversation paused, then another. Then a hush settled over the yard, heavy and still. Heads turned. Eyes narrowed. People stiffened in their seats. Aunt Renee kept chewing, still smiling, still holding that damn plate. "This is a family reunion," she added with a little laugh, like she was doing us all a favor. "Maybe next time you come alone, Janelle. Spare us the drama." A few people chuckled. One person gasped, but said nothing. Most just looked down, away, like if they didn't see me, they didn't have to choose sides. I sat frozen. My fork slipped from my hand and clattered onto the plate. I stared at her, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. Was this a joke? Some twisted attempt at humor? But her face told me the truth. She meant every word. She wanted the silence that followed. She wanted to humiliate me. I looked around the yard, my throat tight, my heart pounding like a drum in my ears. Not one person met my gaze. Not even the ones who had hugged me when I arrived. Not even the ones who whispered, "We're proud of you," when I got promoted last year. That silence wasn't shyness. It was permission. They were letting it happen. I forced myself to speak, though my voice came out hoarse. "He's here because he's family. Just like everyone else." Renee snorted and walked off like she'd just pointed out a stain on a shirt. She returned to her seat, laughing with someone at her table, like she hadn't just tried to reduce my son to an afterthought. Malik stood up. I thought he was going to walk away, and part of me was ready to follow him. But instead, he calmly walked to the porch and sat down on the top step, looking out over the yard. I sat frozen for a moment longer, then rose and joined him. We didn't speak right away. The air was thick, heavy. "You okay?" I asked softly. He nodded. "Yeah." "She was out of line. She always is," he said. His voice was calm, but his hands were folded tight in his lap, knuckles white. He wasn't as unbothered as he looked. "She doesn't matter," I said. He turned slightly, eyes still on the yard. "What she said, that wasn't about me. She said it to make you feel small, not me." And there it was. My boy, just 15, understood it better than most adults. It hit me in the chest. Hard. He saw through her. Through all of them. And what floored me more than anything was that he refused to carry her poison. He wasn't ashamed. He wasn't broken. He didn't need anyone's approval. That was my legacy. Right there on that porch step. When the evening began winding down and the caterers handed over the bill, something unexpected happened. Malik stood up and walked back toward the tables. I followed him with my eyes, unsure what he was doing. He cleared his throat and said, in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear, "Don't worry about the bill. It's taken care of." People looked around in confusion. A few murmured, unsure who he was talking to. Then Malik turned his eyes directly to Aunt Renee and added, "So is your mortgage." A hush fell over the yard like a blanket. Mouths hung open. You could hear the creak of a lawn chair and the soft hum of the porch light. Renee looked up from her drink, stunned. "What are you talking about?" "Your past due balance. It's zero now." "You're welcome," he said, his voice steady. "Call your bank if you don't believe me." She blinked like someone had just splashed water in her face. "Why would you do that?" Malik reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and opened an email. "Confirmations here," he said, handing it to her. 3 months behind. Handled. Her mouth opened and closed. The woman who always had something to say was suddenly speechless. And then my son delivered the final blow, not in anger, not with spite, but with dignity. "Because my mama taught me to be better than the people who try to break you," he said. "And because sometimes the best revenge is letting people live knowing they never had the power to crush you." He handed the phone back and walked off. I followed. We got in the car without another word. As I pulled out of the driveway, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Every single head had turned in our direction. Some eyes were wide, some filled with shame, but none dared to speak. That was the last reunion we ever attended. But they never forgot it. They never forgot the boy they tried to erase, and the woman who raised him. Not broken, not forgotten, unshakable.